This is the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather in Washington and Connie Chung in New York.
Good evening. Possibly the most notorious serial killer in American history met his own brutal end today. 34-year-old Jeffrey Dahmer died after being attacked inside the maximum security prison in Portage, Wisconsin. A second inmate was injured. A third prisoner is the suspected killer. Correspondent Frank Courier has the details.
Serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer was murdered this morning here inside the Columbia Correctional Institute in Portage, Wisconsin, as he and another inmate were cleaning prison bathrooms.
At this time, there is one suspect who is in lockup, and preliminary information does not give us any indication of any kind of motive.
Dahmer, who confessed to the grisly murders of 17 young men and boys, was imprisoned here 2 years ago. He survived another attempt on his life last summer, but died this morning of massive injuries inflicted by another inmate.
Whether it was one injury or lots of injury, it was a mess. There was a lot of blood.
Dahmer's arrest in 1991 led to revelations of murder, mutilation, and even cannibalism. It was almost impossible to imagine, even for Dahmer's own lawyer.
He kept body parts such as the genitalia. He played with heads, painted them. He wanted to create zombies.
With his all-American good looks, Dahmer lured many of his victims from gay bars, drugged their drinks, and then killed them. He confessed to murdering 17 people in all. Dahmer pleaded insanity, but a jury rejected it. He was sentenced to multiple life terms in prison. The families of some of his victims confronted Dahmer in court.
You destroyed the baby of the family, and I hope you go to hell.
I don't want to ever see my mother have to go through this again. Never, Jeffrey. Jeffrey, I hate you, mother. I hate you. This is under control.
At his sentencing, Dahmer apologized for his crimes.
I should have stayed with God. I tried and failed and created a Holocaust. And if I could give my life right now to bring their loved ones back, I would do it. I am so very sorry. I deserve whatever I get because of what I have done.
Today, the families of some of Dahmer's victims reacted to news of his death.
I'm just glad the monster's gone, and that's the bottom line.
I feel relieved that Dahmer's gone. I don't have to worry about how he's living and what he's doing.
It shows today that he paid for what he did to these children out here. These kids had a life.
As the investigation continues, this fatal assault is seen by some as justice. Jeffrey Dahmer's lawyers call it murder, but without tears, they say, only sadness for his victims and the horror of his crimes. Frank Courier, CBS News, Portage, Wisconsin.
The United Nations, NATO, the U.S., and what are supposed to be its European allies all blamed each other today, but they all agree on one point: in Bosnia, the Serbs win. Nothing can or will be done to stop the advance of Serbian armed might. Not even any air raids are planned to try to stop or punish the Serbs. On the ground, the Serbs have hit another hospital as their triumphant endgame rolls on, and as correspondent Alan Pizzi reports, the Serbs are methodically crushing a key Muslim refugee center and military enclave.
Bosnian Serb propaganda video from Bihać shows their forces as triumphant conquerors, and their conquest is characterized by a familiar outrage: ethnic cleansing. In the past, that brought ringing condemnation, but not today.
As a result of the fighting in this area, this village here was burning. I'm not prepared to make any comment on ethnic cleansing.
Muslim prisoners are forced to chant, "Bosnia belongs to Serbs." If the enclave falls, the Bosnian and Croatian Serbs will unite in a Serb-controlled entity marked only by 3 Muslim enclaves, which their Bihać triumph might encourage the Serbs to erase. Under the international peace plan, the Serbs would give up nearly 1/3 of the territory they hold. But now it's a faint, probably vain hope.
But it's difficult to get compromises from a side which, as Mr. Perry said, appears to be making such important military gains.
That Croatian Serbs weren't stopped from entering the Bihać fighting is cited by Bosnian government officials as one more sign of UN indifference.
That's all we have. We have UN resolutions which specified procedure for UNPROFOR and for NATO. Now somebody has to do the job.
But the message from the talking shops of Europe and Washington is that the job can't be done.
It's an illusion, a cruel illusion, to suppose that NATO from the air can determine the outcome of this war.
By conceding that BHATCH is a done deal, the UN and NATO are now faced with an even greater dilemma: what to do about whatever the Serbs plan next. Alan Pizzi, CBS News, Sarajevo.
Here in Washington, President Clinton and his aides tonight are contemplating the very real possibility of a worst-case scenario, a total collapse of the UN peacekeeping mission in Bosnia. National Security Correspondent David Martin has the latest from the Pentagon.
With 2,000 Marines aboard ships in the Adriatic and with hundreds of UN peacekeepers being held hostage by Bosnian Serbs, U.S. officials said today they have promised the Allies they would help pull their troops out of Bosnia if it comes to that.
If any of the countries with forces in the UN need some assistance in removing and come to the U.S. for help, we would certainly seriously consider that request.
That would require the Clinton administration to do what it has so far refused to do: put American combat troops on the ground in Bosnia. The administration is opposed to a UN pullout, but admits the current strategy is not working.
We see no action underway today which will lead to a peace.
The peacekeeping operations seemed to reach a dead end when the UN refused to call in NATO airstrikes to stop the Serb offensive against BiH. The U.S. wanted airstrikes, but Britain and France refused for fear the Serbs would retaliate against their troops in Bosnia. The dispute has become so divisive, a growing number of voices say it's time for NATO to cut its losses.
If we're not going to use massive force from the air, then I think what we have to do is basically decide we're going to tell the British and the French that they ought to leave.
President Clinton's national security advisors met this afternoon at the White House to go over a dwindling list of unappealing options.
One unappealing option is to award the Serbs additional concessions in return for a peace agreement. It might at least silence the bickering among the NATO allies, and as one official said, if the Clinton administration has to choose between saving NATO and saving Bosnia, it will save NATO. David Martin, CBS News, the Pentagon.
Correspondent Rita Braver is at the White House, where President Clinton faces a foreign policy crisis over Bosnia and the humiliation of NATO. Rita?
Dan, much to the dismay of many here, Bosnia has forced its way to the front and center of the White House agenda. The president would much prefer to spend his time solving his domestic political problems. Even as the national security team was here, there was also a gathering of defeated Democratic members of Congress to talk about what to do after the disastrous election. But on Bosnia, the administration is in the awkward position of trying to solve a problem that really has no good solution. The U.S. will try to push for a ceasefire and even try to get Boris Yeltsin to help put pressure on the Serbs, Dan.
Rita Braver live at the White House. And still to come on tonight's CBS Evening News, Newt Gingrich talks about Bosnia, Hillary Clinton, and a lot of other subjects.
And also ahead, Eye on America. Was it murder or suicide? New evidence tonight in the mysterious death of a government germ warfare expert. The cleanup is underway today after wild weather left at least 14 people dead from North Dakota to the Deep South. Some of the worst, or tornado in Tennessee, tore through a Memphis suburb. The twister killed 3 people in one house attending a family reunion for the holiday weekend. The tornado also destroyed or damaged whole blocks at a time. Farther north, icy roads and blowing snow were the problem. In North Dakota, South Dakota, Sioux Falls look more like snowfalls. There and in many parts of the Midwest, it was beginning to look a lot like Christmas instead of the first Monday after Thanksgiving. Dan?
As for the political climate here in Washington, the lame ducks flew back into town today for a post-election session of Congress. And on at least one score, the upcoming make-or-break vote on a world trade agreement, there seemed to be a bipartisan warming trend today. Our chief Washington correspondent Bob Schieffer reports.
Still reeling from the drubbing they took in the November elections, Democratic members of Congress drifted back to the Capitol today for the lame duck session to vote on the trade agreement called GATT.
This GATT agreement not only tears down trade barriers, it also bulldozes differences of party, philosophy, and ideology. I thank you all for being here.
To show the broad range of support, the White House invited in everyone from the Carter administration's Burt Lance to Jim Baker, George Bush's Secretary of State. In truth, the president had to water down the agreement to get key Republican support. But Democrats said that just showed Mr. Clinton really did get the voters' message in November to stop bickering and end gridlock.
He has cut a deal on the GATT agreement, assuring that the extreme left and right will be isolated.
But if support for the agreement is bipartisan, so too is the opposition. Organized labor fears it will cost jobs and hates it. And today, a sprinkling of activists and politicians from the left and right claimed it would hurt U.S. trade in the long run.
I had every expectation that I would end up voting for GATT. I must say, after having gone through it, though, my mind has been changed.
Lame duck sessions often produce the unexpected. During the last one in '82, House members gave themselves a pay raise, and senators relaxed restrictions on outside income before adjourning.
But expect no surprises this time. The Republican leaders who will run Congress next year are with the president on GATT. They say it will pass both houses by the end of the week. Then everyone can go home, rest up for next year when the fighting really starts. Bob Schieffer, CBS News, the Capitol.
Stay with us for more of tonight's CBS Evening News. Emergency treatment for Philadelphia's 911 system after a killing that might have been prevented. We told you here last week of a boy in Philadelphia who was fatally beaten by a group of teenage attackers. He died after frantic phone calls to 911 were tragically mishandled. The mayor today called the entire episode unacceptable, and he took action to help ensure that future emergencies get the response they deserve. Richard Threlkeld reports.
After several days of official silence, Philadelphia Mayor Ed Rendell explained today why the city has fired 3 of its 911 emergency operators and taken disciplinary action against 4 others.
There is no excuse for rude and abusive behavior to citizens of this city, whether it's in a clerical office in City Hall or the Municipal Service Building, or it's in the police radio room.
The police radio room's been the focus of a huge controversy since the murder earlier this month of 16-year-old Eddie Pollock, an innocent victim of a group of teenagers who'd invaded his neighborhood looking for a fight.
Okay, what is the problem?
While frantic neighbors besieged the 911 number, some of the police operators, as the phone recordings indicate, were rude, indifferent, and abusive.
Beating the hell out of people with baseball bats up here. When are you going to send somebody? Who's got a bat, sir? Who got a bat? Some gorilla. What the hell do you mean? Wait a minute. Don't talk to me like that. I asked you a question.
Eddie Pollock was dying by the time police arrived, 19 calls and 35 minutes later. Today, a friend who was with him blamed 911.
They would have done the right thing. Eddie Pollock would have never died.
The mayor's promised to get better trained police operators and more of them. The tragedies that it took the senseless murder of a teenager to show that Philadelphia's 911 number is in need of some emergency help of its own. Richard Threlkeld, CBS News, New York.
The latest breast cancer research is rekindling debate over the need for annual mammograms for women in their 40s. The National Cancer Institute says most women don't need mammograms every year until age 50. But 2 studies out today conclude that yearly mammograms to detect breast cancer should start at 40, not 50. A killer executed in Texas a year and a half ago now has a permanent afterlife in computer cyberspace. Joseph Jernigan left his body to science, and the National Library of Medicine today showed off the results. Jernigan's body was scanned top to bottom, front to back, and inside out to produce the first ever 3-dimensional computerized cadaver. Medical students can use it to learn anatomy and to practice simulated surgery.
Here in Washington, attention goes beyond this week's lame duck session of Congress to the next Congress when Washington's new Republican power brokers take command. One of them is House Speaker-to-be Newt Gingrich. In a one-on-one interview today, Gingrich had strong views on many subjects, including the action of the UN and NATO or lack of action in Bosnia.
Here's a case where the UN has stopped the Bosnians from arming themselves, stopped the introduction of heavy equipment. The Serbs have been overwhelmingly helped by Serbia. And so the aggressors are being, in effect, placated and aided by the United Nations.
So you would favor lifting the arms embargo
Absolutely.
Do you favor considering strategic bombing targets inside Serbia itself?
I don't think you need to do that, but I would favor for an interim doing whatever it takes to slow down the Serbs while the Bosnians arm themselves. But the goal here is to allow Bosnians to protect Bosnia, not to use Americans or Germans or French or English.
A school prayer, is it still high on your agenda to have a vote on it early in the next session?
I would hope that sometime in '95 we'd have a vote on it. I certainly would hope we could have hearings on it starting fairly early. But I think it's an important topic. Clearly, though, our first agenda is to pass the contract and to bring up the 10 bills in the first 100 days. That's going to keep us more than busy.
Is this a change of position now?
No, I said all along, I would hope by July that we could get to a vote. Remember, we're supposed to get done with the contract by early April, so we still have several months in there to have hearings and to see where we're at.
It's been your contention that the First Lady, Hillary Rodham Clinton, has fallen on her face a few times. What do you think her role should be over the next 2 years?
My advice would be simply to look at Eleanor Roosevelt, look at people who've been very effective as First Lady, and then carve out a very specific area that she wants to really work on and do so in an open, bipartisan way. And I think she'd be very effective. And I think if they'll learn these lessons, that she could have a very successful 2 or 6 years, depending on whether or not they get reelected.
You don't really believe they're going to get reelected?
Oh, listen, I'm a historian. I believe anything's possible. I think the odds are certainly there's a very real possibility you're going to have a second administration, sure.
I'm not sure of this count, but I believe that in the Congress that's now ending, there are at least 20 committee chairs or subcommittee chairs who are either black or Hispanic. In the incoming Congress, will there be any?
I'm not sure there'll be any because of seniority. I mean, the truth is that our incoming members tend to be younger. Our incoming members who are black or Hispanic or Asian tend to be younger and newer than the Democrats. And so they may not be as high in seniority. But they are going to have very active roles. I think you're going to see them on the floor a lot.
But I want to make sure I understand. You think we may have a situation in the new House in which there will not be a single committee or subcommittee chairman who's black or Hispanic?
I think that's possible.
Congressman Gingrich also had a prediction on the World Trade Agreement, GATT, a trade deal he supports. Gingrich says he believes there are now enough yes votes for passage by the House.
This is the story of the anniversary of a death that is still shrouded in mystery 4 decades later. It was in 1953 that a U.S. Army germ warfare expert took his own life. At least that's what the CIA says. But his sons have always suspected otherwise. Today, forensic scientists gave their opinion. But is the case closed? Anthony Mason has more in tonight's Eye on America.
41 years ago today, Dr. Frank Olson died suddenly and strangely in the early hours of the morning. For 41 years, the CIA has said the germ warfare scientist committed suicide, hurling himself from the window of a New York City hotel, 13 stories to the street below. But the facts in a new investigation, says forensic expert James Starrs,
leave me on the brink of saying there is a homicide.
There's a significant fracture.
Today, Professor Starrs and a team of scientists revealed the results of a 6-month investigation. At the request of his sons Eric and Nils, Dr. Olson's body was exhumed this summer.
A complete autopsy was done.
While the scientific evidence is not conclusive, Professor Starrs says
the homicide hypothesis is the strongest of the lot.
The facts are few. In 1953, 9 days before his death, Dr. Frank Olson was given LSD, unwittingly, as part of a CIA experiment. He reacted badly, becoming depressed, blurting out secrets uncontrollably in public.
Dr. Olson was brought here to New York to get psychiatric help. In his hotel room at 3 o'clock in the morning on November 28th, the CIA officer who'd accompanied him said he awoke to the sound of Dr. Olson diving through a closed window and drawn shade to his death.
So what we're seeing here would be the suicide scenario.
At Engineering Animation in Ames, Iowa, they've reconstructed a variety of scenarios to explain Dr. Olson's fall.
If Dr. Olson was thrown out the window, could he have landed where he landed?
Yes.
The suicide scenario, the leap through a closed window and drawn shade, Professor Starrs says simply doesn't add up.
Suicidal acts from heights are not committed in this fashion. This is not only atypical, it is almost extraordinarily unique.
The CIA officer in the room with Dr. Olson the night he died, Robert Lashbrook, declined to be interviewed. The man in charge of the CIA's top-secret LSD tests in the 50s was Dr. Sidney Gottlieb.
And if he were to talk, there would no longer be any mystery.
But Dr. Gottlieb also declined to be interviewed.
I'm not a bit interested in participating in a media event.
I can understand
being used to entertain people.
This is not entertaining. This is a matter of great suffering to the Olson family.
I'm very compassionate about that.
I want to study the report and decide what I want to do.
Eric Olson is now considering suing the government to get some answers. Today, the scientist said there are so many more questions in a case which many seem to wish would have stayed buried with Frank Olson's body. In Washington, I'm Anthony Mason for Eye on America.
And that's the news. Tomorrow on CBS This Morning with Harry Smith and Paula Zahn, a look at the life and death of Jeffrey Dahmer.
This is Dan Rather in Washington. Connie and I will see you again tomorrow night. Good night.
Good night. Good night, Dan. Good night, everyone.